my therapy room, or now my Zoom room, I guess, right, becomes an alchemical vessel, I hope, of safety to actually, we talk a lot about self-love, but really it is about accepting ourselves, the good, the bad, the shit, the great stuff. I mean, just all of it. Carl Rogers said that until we accept ourselves, we can't change.
It starts right here, deep in your heart. Start right here. Oh, that's where it starts. Right here. We look to your heart. It's always and only starting right here.
Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger bring over 90 years of clinical experience to this important podcast, and they offer you a guarantee. You will gain something of personal value from each episode. And now, what matters most.
It starts right here. Start right here.
Welcome back to Start Right Here. I'm Tom Rutledge. With me is the good Dr. Alan Berger. The last couple of times we've been together, we've just been you and me and Patrick, but we have a guest today, so everybody act your best. Let me just tell you a little bit that I know about Dr. Nadine here, and then we'll let her fill us in on what she wants us to know. Dr. Nadine Macaluso, am I saying your last name correctly?
Perfectly.
Oh, perfectly. All right. She's a psychologist. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She has a PhD in somatic psychotherapy, which is interesting to me, and I hope we can talk some about that. You're bi-coastal in your private practice, right?
Yes.
You're in California and New York.
Right.
That's
correct.
cool. And so people we call you. Do people call you Dr. Nay?
Yes. They do.
But the only problem I have with that is it feels like I'm voting no for something, when they say, Nay, but I like Dr. Nay. I love your signature, Doctor. Your Doctor. I think I told you that in email. But you're an expert in attachment, dealing with attachment trauma and shame. A lot of the stuff we talk a lot about. And you also work with the dark tetrad. Tetrad. I always get tongue tied on that word. Tetrad personalities, which if I'm not mistaken, are taking over the world. So it's good we'd be talking about that. And you also have a podcast called Dr. Nay's Talking Bar, right?
Yes.
I'm trying to read my own handwriting.
I know. I understand your plight.
It's easy. So, and whatever else you want us to know about you, or how you got started in this business, and
sure, I'll dive right in. So,
go for it.
I grew up in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and I was blessed to be raised by a mother who was a total hippie and had me speak about my feelings nonstop and process everything. And I didn't know it at the time as a child. That was due to her relational trauma, because she was actually in an orphanage for the first 2 years of her life during World War II. So she would ask me every night at the dinner table, Nadine, do you think it's nature or nurture that shapes a person? And I would say, Mom, I'm 10. I don't care. But sure enough, that her way of speaking, her way of teaching me how to process my emotions definitely got imprinted on my soul and psyche and body. And we always talked about therapy. My mother went to therapy, I remember, when I was a teenager. And then I was modeling in the city, New York City, to make money, because I grew up with a single mom and I needed to make my own money at a young age. And I met my ex-husband, Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. And some of you might know him. There was a movie made about our lives together. And so as soon as I met him, I went to therapy, because I thought, I was 23. I was like, there's no way I'm handling this guy.
Right. Some people inspire others to go to therapy, don't they?
Yes. He was I always say the wolf was my Buddha.
Yep. Teachers come in many, many forms.
I know. Yeah. And so I loved therapy. I remember even loving it to the point that I would show up like Pavlov's dog at my therapist's office at 1 p.m. on Monday, even when she was on vacation. I just loved it. And I had 2 beautiful children and a very tumultuous marriage with him, tons of drugs and emotional abuse. And so I did decide to leave him 7 to 8 years into our marriage and moved to California. And in my late 30s, I was meditating a lot and decided I was going to go back to school to become a therapist.
Wow.
And be of service because I knew it saved my life.
Yeah. Keep the ripple effect going.
Yeah. And I
beautiful.
Can't believe I get paid to do what I do.
I know. It's an amazing job. It's like there are people who have real jobs.
Right. That's true.
And then there's us.
And then there's us.
Yeah, then there's, boy, but what an experience you've had, Nadine, huh? Going through all that. Like, what, when you look back, what was the most challenging part of that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the most challenging part was initially not understanding what I was in.
Yeah.
Because I had grown up, my mother had divorced my father when I was 6. And so my home was very peaceful, actually. It wasn't perfect.
But peaceful.
But peaceful. There was no yelling. And then to meet somebody that had a vicious temper, but still loved you. And that it was so confusing.
Yeah. That was the word that came to my mind when you just said that, is that how confusing that would be.
Yeah. I mean, we call that cognitive dissonance, I guess now. I know we're at 53. But back then I was just purely confused. And so that was really, really hard. Because I had no idea. I just felt like I was learning as I was going without a guide. I mean, I guess my therapist was. And then I think the second part was my own self-confrontation as to why I chose a person like that on some level. Yeah, that was painful too.
I was reading in your journal, it says, we want to make our unconscious attachment patterns and specific survival strategies conscious. And so it's probably the making conscious.
Yes.
What's kind of unconsciously coded from early on, right?
Yeah. And James Hillman, one of my favorite authors and theorists, he always says, like, consciousness isn't always that much fun.
Right.
It's not so transcendent. Doesn't feel so transcendent most of the time. I don't know about you guys, but.
No, it's muddy down there. It's murky and hard. Yeah.
James Hillman, I resonate with his work. I've been in many workshops with Dr. Hillman, and so powerful, just so powerful. His one book, one of my favorite books was, "We've had 100 years of psychotherapy and the world keeps getting worse."
Yes. I put that on my Instagram post when the whole COVID this year. Yeah.
It's such a good, I mean, the whole theme about how therapy unintentionally oftentimes just promotes this narcissism, right?
Yeah.
Self-focus. And he says, there might be a problem with this, is that we might be overcorrecting, right? In that sense.
And it was leading a lot of people, as he said, to be passive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's right. That's not what therapy is about. We want to, I mean, at least in the work that I do, is that I want to, and not empower people, but let them, give them the resources to have agency.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
To take action.
Well, we think, I think certainly back in the 80s and 90s when I was kind of coming up in this stuff is it was always about that narcissism you're talking about, Alan. It was kind of encouraged. It was always about how to feel better, and we also were pretty delusional as therapists back in those days too, because I'm pretty sure we thought that once we, had gone through enough of these treatment programs and hit enough pillows and screamed enough and enough snot had come out of our noses that all of a sudden we would be transformed into different people. And, and we had some learning to do about that for sure. But it's where I came to pretty quickly was that we need to go to therapy to be better, not to feel better, to be better people. And the other thing that I got to at a certain point in that process was understanding or believing for myself that we wanted to do that so that we can rejoin the broader community and be of use. It really was sort of a hippie thing in a sense that I had not forgotten my 60s and 70s when I came to be a therapist. It's like, but it's like we do want it's not just about how be me. It's about how can I take care of myself. And what you said, Nadine, about the confrontation to yourself, Alan talks about a lot. Both talk about this quite a bit in some of the work we do, but and of course everybody does it. We need to start with understanding everybody does not feel particularly drawn to that part of the work. That's true. And it's so I think one of the things we do difficult for me sometimes is that judgment call about, when, I get that I nudge people, we make things a little uncomfortable and stuff like that. But I've also worked as a recovering, among other things, control freak. I've worked real hard not to just shove people into things. So, it's like, it's not up to me. So that's a tough balance sometimes.
Yes. I think that is a tough balance. And that's why, Alan Shore's title, The Art of Psychotherapy, because it's an art.
Absolutely.
I mean, for me, I don't care how, I got my PhD and did a 2-year postdoc training on relational trauma, utilizing somatic therapy. But that's like, all that training takes me so far. Sometimes, I also have to mix my intuition with somebody's attachment. With a narcissistic personality, I might be more aggressive or confrontational because they'll respond better to that. But not with a person that really, really is painfully shy and can't really even see people, right?
Right.
So it's always meeting the person where they are.
Yeah, and we're always hopefully gaining and learning how to use all these different tools. So you have lots and lots of choices to draw from. It's like, because it's sort of like if I have some people who identify themselves so much by they say I do this kind of therapy. I always say, I think it's like I say I have a hammer, and so you ask me, you say, could you fix my watch? And I say, yes, I can. And hopefully you're smart enough to go like, I don't want you to fix my watch because that might not be what it needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we need a lot. And we also need to know, and I can already tell from just meeting you that you have this one which is just humility. The idea of understanding we don't know everything. That's not the requirement. We're not supposed to. I'm not going to know everything till the day I die. But the idea of having people like we talked at before we went on about our producers, ours is Patrick and yours is Maddie, and it's like just how wonderful it is to be able to have people who are so resourceful to count on in life. Because that's about us letting go and saying I don't have to know everything.
Yes.
We all need that in life.
Yes.
Not just for podcasts.
So some people may not know what somatic psychotherapy is. Could you give us a snapshot of that?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Somatic psychotherapy really originated with Wilhelm Reich in the 1950s. And he was actually a student of Freud. And he believed that the body and its innate wisdom needed to be brought into the therapeutic container or encounter. And so really in therapy, how I use it in therapy is that I'm always reading gesture, intonation, whatever people are doing with their hands, right? Like I'm Italian, I can't talk without using my hands. What's happening with their eyes. And I think a lot of our defenses that I don't even want to call them defenses, but adaptive survival strategies that we used as children, a lot of times are in the mind. And so the body is another way to get to the authenticity of the person. And so that's what somatic psychotherapy means. You're using not just the mind, but the innate wisdom of the body to facilitate the person's process. And I just, again, it's just another portal in.
Yeah, I love that part, because the idea, I always think about it sometimes in simplistic terms. We use therapists, we learn the cognitive, we learn how to use the mental aspect to get in. We talk to people and they can get the feeling, but just the powerful thing of knowing more, and it's just to ask questions that are about, where do you feel that in your body? Where, it's like, I notice you touch your heart when you say that, and just actually just as subtle as that is, not even having to make a lesson or out of that, just some of the, just sharing that awareness really can make people pay attention in different ways. I love
Alan touches his heart quite a bit as well, I've noticed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Always. He's this. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Jedi power.
And I'll notice a lot of times I'll be in therapy and someone will look off and then they'll answer me. And I'll say, no, what just happened there? I saw you go somewhere. It's so subtle.
Yeah.
And I assume I know nothing, because I do know nothing. The more I know, the less I know. And then a whole thing will emerge.
Yeah.
That they weren't going to share for whatever reason, shame or judgment.
What you're describing to us is just how you stay in such very close contact with the person that's in your room, and that you're so aware. I like to describe therapy as a movement from now to next, right? Is that we're constantly moving towards next. And what I'm hearing is how tuned in you are to that person's next and what that means, and inviting them to share that experience with you.
I really learned that in my training, the Neuroeffective relational model. It's such a crazy name. I don't know why they call it that.
Yeah, that's now, who is the
Dr. Lawrence Heller, and he was I think he worked with Alexander Lowen, who's also a somatic psychotherapist. And so he's a brilliant man. Don't love the name, but he really taught us about that contact tracking, almost like Hakomi, right? Tracking. Notice when a person's connected to themselves and then disconnected. And so there is that tracking, and the body helps us do that. Yeah,
no, that's right. But I've always loved Lowen's work. I just thought, I mean, what a genius. There's one thing that I use in I do a lot of work on emotional dependency. And then the rules that get generated from our emotional dependency. And these rules we put in place, in order to try to create a world that we can feel safe in, that's going to meet our needs, right? And Lowen had this great line that I quote all the time, and I won't get it exactly right, but it goes something like, when in our childhood we have a traumatic experience that either threatens our sense of security or threatens our self-acceptance. It's interesting how he separates those in a sense.
Yes.
He talks about emotional security, obviously, or physical. I mean, it's
right, sure.
And then he's talking about that self-acceptance, right? That relationship with ourself that threatens our relationship with ourself. He goes, we will then require our future to reverse the experience of the past. So I've used that to say, when we have those experiences, we will generate a whole set of rules that become these demands that we make on life, on people, to act a certain way so that we feel okay.
Yes.
So it turns us into control freaks, right? If you love me, you won't do anything without me, right? You'll show me you love me all the time because I can't handle it. If you're not showing you love me, then I start to get anxious. That kind of. So I'm sure that you could plug it into your attachment model.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
of course.
But it's such a brilliant observation.
Oh yeah, he's brilliant.
I've seen him work many, many times. He was one of the people that they were inviting out to the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference at
they were? Okay.
Institute. And he would I've seen him do at least maybe 3 or 4 demonstrations with people. And this was when he was like in his late 70s. I mean, so alive.
Yeah. And those really are the two things, is that, and that's why I love doing therapy, because my therapy room, or now my Zoom room, I guess, right, becomes an alchemical vessel, I hope, of safety to actually, we talk a lot about self-love, but really it is about accepting ourselves, the good, the bad, the shit, the great stuff. I mean, just all of it. Carl Rogers said that until we accept ourselves, we can't change.
That's right. It's more to me, what I say is this, it's for me in my own life and working with others too, but certainly for me, it's more about self-respect than it is self-love. And it's about integrity, and it's about, because I can be not my biggest fan, to say the least, on any given day, still to this day, and still at the end of the day measure how I did at being the best version of myself I could be, and I can come out okay. It's like the idea of self-respect always has made more sense. It always seems more tangible. It seems like now and it also goes to what we were talking about before, about it's not just about feeling better. It's about being better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I love that, because always the best definition of self-esteem that I've ever heard came from Nathaniel Branden, when he said, self-esteem is the reputation we have with ourselves. Isn't that a great way to say it?
Yeah.
Yeah, with ourselves. My goodness. So it goes right back to the self-respect. Am I honoring myself? Am I operating with integrity? Am I operating with humility? What's so interesting, though, is how the rules change for self-respect as you mature, right? Before, like as let's say a young man, to me, self-respect meant that I was the coolest guy in the room, right? I had to be, if I was the coolest guy, then I could respect myself at the end of the day, right? And to be the coolest guy meant that I had to drink more than anybody else. I mean, things that I look back now and I say, boy, there wasn't much self-respect in that behavior at all. But I'm thinking, boy, look how cool I am, right? That kind of.
Yeah.
And then that changes, right? As our consciousness expands.
Yes.
Boy, what seemed to be cool wasn't so darn cool. I mean, it's like I had this backwards.
Yeah. And I'm glad, that's such a great point. I'm glad you bring it up, because so many people would say to me, how did you feel when the movie came out? How did you feel when the movie came out? And you know what? I felt fine.
Yeah.
I felt fine because I accepted and respected myself.
You see her left shoulder? Her left shoulder, she has the shrug. We talk about the shrug. It's and people have one or more, like these they're shouldered as like we are handed. It's like, but it's that, I call it healthy apathy. I tell, when I do training, I tell the therapists, I say, watch when your clients, when they start to achieve the things that they're to achieve, two things you're going to notice. One is they're going to start using the word weird a lot. Because change doesn't feel, this is great. It just feels weird. They'll say this is weird, and that's a sketchy time because that's when those saboteurs will come back and try to get you. But the other thing I'll tell people is watch for the shrug, because it's a very subtle thing. But each time you said that about what your response to when the movie came out, your left shoulder goes up. It's just like so.
I surrendered. I mean. I had done so much. I mean, it was ad nauseum already how much work I had done on myself around this whole experience. And really, I cared about my kids.
Yeah.
I was an adult woman. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Because we had processed it ad nauseum, they were like, okay, Mom, I have a pimple and my girlfriend broke up with me. So, and people are like, really? And I said, well, listen, of course I was concerned how it would affect my practice, because that was a little weird, because the timing was right when I was becoming a therapist. However, myself, I knew who I was. It didn't matter what was portrayed on the screen. And sometimes I'm even in shock as I say it now, that it was okay.
But we all have our process. It's like, no, I mean, I remember, if somebody wants to tell stories about me prior to 1985 and they're telling stories about, just a pretty sick motherfucker, it's like, that's me. Yeah. I've come a long way since then. And if, when we get trapped into things and we're doing our things and I love that. I love that.
The movie for Tom is going to be called The Texas Terror. That's going to be Tom's movie, not The Wolf of Wall. The Texas. Tell me what did the movie get right, and what did they miss in the?
I mean, I think the movie was very funny, and it wasn't very funny.
Yeah, I bet.
It was not funny. I always say it was a Greek tragedy. And so I did enjoy that it was funny. It made it more entertaining for me, of course. And it got right his addiction.
Yes.
He did a lot more Quaaludes and Coke, but they used Coke because they thought it had a better sensory experience, I guess.
But his Quaaludes were
his was much more Quaaludes, and we never fought ever about women. We always fought about drugs.
Yes,
but in his mind, he wanted to make it that we fought about women, because we did fight. I mean, I'm from Brooklyn, not.
Trust me, I understand it. My mom came from the Bronx.
Okay, so so you get that. So that was my one thing that I said to him. We never fought about. I never threw water in his face.
Yeah.
He made it seem like I was the violent one a little bit. Except for one scene, but and so I had to wrestle with that. But again, I just knew what was true, I guess.
Well, at the end of the movie, she takes the kids and removes herself from that bad situation. So
which was true.
Right. At no point did I feel like, you were the bad guy in that story, at least in the fictionalized version of it. Yeah.
No, it just, of course, to know me as you're just getting to know me in this brief moment, it doesn't show my depth of character and how deep I think and feel. And my husband and I got to watch the movie at a private screening at Paramount. And it was a bit surreal. And I remember after the movie, I looked at him, I go, we did okay. Pretty young girl, loved a crazy guy, loved her kids. Done. We're out.
That's the cliff notes of the movie.
That's a wrap. I mean, listen, the movie's all about him. Let's be real. Of course it is.
Yes, right. Of course.
Of course it is. And we're
but,
friendly.
That's in some way. Quaaludes was his drug of choice because he had so much energy and he had to find some way to bring himself down. I mean, it totally makes sense because I do think that our drug of choice relates to what we're trying to do to complete ourselves in some way.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to say that.
It's we're really looking for some way to make us whole. I wish I could credit myself with that, but that's what Rollo May said. He says, I don't believe in symptoms. He says, throw out the idea of somebody having a symptom. Somebody is searching for some way to maintain their existence. They're trying to find some way to continue to be able to operate with as much wholeness as they can possibly garner, given the possibilities, given the resources available.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to say it. Yeah, he was like, it was like 1 billion miles an hour.
Oh God, you get that feeling. It's like I feel it in my chest when I see that portrayal of him. I mean,
so he just needed something to
bring him down.
So and we get along well. And actually, the day the movie came out, I had him over because it was Christmas Day, and I just think that's. Yeah,
did he ever find recovery or anything? Did he ever?
Oh yeah, he recovered. Yeah.
Oh, he did. Okay.
He did. Yeah. And my daughter now, we have a son and daughter. My daughter's now a therapist.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's like when I do training workshops. I always tell the group, it's like, we don't get into this business because we're just so damn healthy. We can't wait to share it. It's like, we're here because we're seekers, and it's like, and that goes to what you were saying just then, Alan. It reminds me of what Nadine was saying earlier, just a little in passing, saying I don't necessarily like to call these defenses, but the word defenses defense has gotten a bad reputation in our business sometimes. It's like, if you think about, we all need defenses. It's like, I mean, you know, it's like we need to be able, and it needs to be appropriate. What we have is, you know, we get to a certain place in our lives and we realize we need defenses, but instead of wearing just some regular clothes, we're walking around in armor, you know, clunking around all the time. And it's like, but it's what you said, Alan, is that, I mean, so much of what we do for a living is to help people look at those things from a place, you know, and to me, I love the idea that, and I get the feeling that Nadine, that you fall in this category too, that I would say that I spend more time teaching people how they're not crazy than telling them that how they're crazy. It's like no, this is how you make sense. And it's like, and what you were saying about people's drug of choice is just one example of that, Alan, is the idea that this seems really crazy out of context that I respond to these situations like this, but it's like, no, if you know my story, and if I get to know my story, I can have compassion. And it begins with that, of course, mentality, that sense of like, oh, well, of course I act that way. Of course I respond that way. And only then after that do we have choices. But I love that idea that we really do make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And my mother always told me the best line. And I say it to all my patients, attributing to what you said, I feel so crazy. I said, well, my mother said, just when you think you're losing your mind, you might be regaining it.
That's it. Yeah.
I love that.
I had a sponsor who used to say, whenever somebody says they're losing it, they're finding something.
Right.
It's like, they're not losing something. They're finding something. It's just really scary.
Yeah. And self-compassion. And we're so hard on ourselves, myself included.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I realized through my first marriage, my addiction to perfection was completely to cover my shame. Because of my father leaving at 6 and yada, yada, yada. And then at 39, I got breast cancer and it actually turned out fine. I caught it very quick. I didn't need chemo, radiation. I chose to get a double mastectomy. I mean, it was as good as breast cancer was going to go, but I was feeling totally anxious. And only through much therapy again, right? Another learning, love the learning. I realized my armor of perfection was cracked. And that's why I was feeling anxious.
Yes.
Yeah, the curse of perfection, isn't it?
Oh.
It's such a curse. It really is.
Needs to be cracked.
I think that such an important point you're making now is that sometimes we have those moments in our life where they really become an invitation to look at something like that, don't they? Like when you had breast cancer and what you went through.
Because I was like, why there was no reason for me to really be anxious. It was it was 3 millimeters. They said it would take them 20 years to metastasize. I did a radical thing, but it wasn't about the physicality. It was that armor of perfection had cracked.
So other women that are facing that, what would you say to them as they're facing a double mastectomy? What are some of the things that really helped you in that?
Yeah. What really helped me was having beautiful doctors that I loved and that I felt had my back and were by my side. They were 2 female doctors. To really resource yourself.
And they really held you then, is what you're saying, that there was a certain kind of experience with them that was so important.
So important. They were loving, kind, attuned to me. They listened to me. I trusted them. I really trusted them, and to really resource yourself. And then I called friends who had breast cancer, who had gone through breast cancer, and to you have to have resources when you face issues like that.
Yes.
God, that's such a giant lesson in any topic we could choose to talk about. That's one of the isolation is the killer here. It's like I tell people it's like my alcoholism, my self-hatred, my whatever, my assholism. None of that stuff is enough to kill me unless it involves isolation and I'm no longer connected to my community. you know, because that community is going to help me do it. And I love since you talk about the somatic stuff, I love when you were telling about your doctors, is your two expressions were had my back and was at my side. Mm-hmm. It's like, and then Alan, the next thing you said, and I would imagine, I don't know if you were conscious, but you may be consciously aware of that, but she was really describing being held. It's like, you know, because it couldn't have been scripted better. She said that, then your hands came up.
All right, Tom, we got to admit to you, Nadine and I scripted that before. We've been talking now for the last several months. And
well done.
Just want to let you know.
Couldn't have been better written. It was perfect.
Just to see if you've been listening. See, we just want to know
he's been listening.
How astute your observation abilities are. And look, you just passed in flying colors.
All right, I'm gone. See ya.
That's it. You're done. We'll give you an A+ on that one.
I graduate. I'm
finally graduate.
I've been waiting to finish. Something. I want to finish something.
There's a bunch of words that come to mind when I sit here with you, Nadine. First of all, you're beautiful. That's one of the things. But not only just you're beautiful to look at, but just sitting with you is a beautiful experience. You feel so safe to me because you've really done that work, and I can really feel that in how transparent and honest and willing you are to just be here with us. And I just want to give you a big hug.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I feel safe with both of you, right? There's a feeling in the ether, even if we're not in the same room, that I can be received.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things 2020 has taught us is that maybe physical location is maybe is overrated. I mean, I've been amazed at I really would have, if you'd asked me, a year ago, when this stuff was just starting, and I was thinking I was going to take off a couple of weeks from seeing clients in the office, I guess for the next couple of weeks, and I kind of felt pressured to do that. I didn't like that idea, but I'll do that. And it's like, but I mean, the fact that we've experienced what can happen, and we do have a way of, that's a beautiful way of saying it too, Alan, is the idea, because we really do experience each other, even it's through technology.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I remember being nervous about that as well, because especially being a somatic psychotherapist, I convinced myself, another story that it has to be when a body meets a body, but no. And it taught me that. And it gave me so much more freedom to go, be with my grandson, and I wouldn't have been able to do that.
Yeah, we could work from anywhere. It was the coolest.
Anywhere.
I tell my wife, I said, because when you work for yourself, you take a vacation, the biggest expense is what money you're not going to be making. It's like you can get a good deal on a place to stay and a flight. It's like, but there's always that amount of money you're not going to make. Yeah. And I told you, I said, I think we may be able to do it once there's such a thing as travel again. We can go to other places, because I can work from any place. Because what you said about the somatic stuff and the nervousness, because so much of what I do is experiential. It's just, I just tell people we're going to bring everything out into the room, and we're going to bring out your consciousness into 3 dimensions. And and I'd done a lot of remote stuff just because of people who contacted me because of books and stuff, but I'd never done experiential therapy that way. It was amazing to find out you can do this work over, I mean, in some ways it was so simple. Like I'm just as an example, I'm looking at Patrick here, and I'm going, like, if he's talking about this voice that we're identifying as being a saboteur and a mean voice to himself, I'll say, is it on your right or your left? And they'll go, it's on my left. It's like, okay, does your chair have wheels on it? Yes, it does. Just move over a little bit, and so rather than go sit in that chair, it just became, and the nuance was amazing. It was like, people could feel the difference just moving. And I thought, it's a whole, and more to learn. Like what you were saying earlier, Nadine, it's like, more to learn.
Well, listen, I've done therapy in my RV. My husband's driving and I'm in the back. That's in the RV.
Somatic therapy will travel.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, RV sales have really gone up during this time. And I've been looking at one of those, what are they, streamliners or whatever they're called. But
yeah, I know what
Gulfstream, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Nice. Go for it. I love it. We love it.
These things are incredible now, the way they're made. And now I just saw this one thing about these homes this guy are building, these micro homes.
Oh, yeah.
They're like 250 square feet or whatever it is. But the way they're designed, they're like 10 times as big as that. It's remarkable what's happening. And look, this is what happens, right? We hit a crisis. We'll all try to figure out how to adapt to it. And in the adapting, we develop all these other possibilities.
Yep.
We get creative.
We get creative. And
I always say the body and brain grow from threat.
That's right.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what we're seeing. As horrible as this has been, and for the people that have lost people, and there's been a lot of trauma, and there's been another side to it, for sure.
My adjustment, it hasn't always been smooth this last year, but I do my best.
And I've eaten way too much ice cream. I feel like
me too. Yeah.
Well, no. Well, I happen to have some information for you guys. There is no such thing as too much ice cream.
I feel better already.
I promise that doesn't exist. But Patrick, I want to say this to you. This last year, getting to know you through the political bullshit crisis of all this stuff, for one thing, is like. Now it's when nothing smooth about it, but it's like, be sure that you don't have anybody in there telling you it's supposed to be, because it's not. It's like, no, that's one of the things that where I feel like I really gotten to know you, and just how gut level honest you are, and how vulnerable you're willing to be.
I was going to ask you, Tom, you were talking about self-esteem earlier, and about how you kind of have a metric that's separate from how you feel about yourself in any given day, that you were kind of speaking to how you can redeem
it's
at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's basically for one thing, I call it living by the regret reduction program. And that is living and this goes back to something that Viktor Frankl talked about, that I can't quote directly, but the idea that he would say, live the moment as if it's your second time through. It's like, and basically what I add to that for me is, and of course I fucked it up the first time. So how am I going to change it? So the idea of living, saying, if I were, I call it mental health tricks to make me reasonably mentally healthy, is that the idea that if I were given an opportunity at the end of my life to review this day and do something different, I want to have as many days as I can where I would just go, let it ride. It's okay. It's like, so nice. And so that's the place where it's like, and I think that's what you're talking about, Patrick. It's like, it's not about self-love. I mean, I like happy. I'm a fan of happy. I have a long history of what I'd say is it became really evident to me early on in my therapy when people were saying I was self-critical, that was a massive understatement. It's like, no, this is condemnation. This is hatred, all this other stuff. So self-love always kind of gives me a little flinch, that stuff. But the idea, I need something to be practical and tangible, and just be able to say, if I'm as one of the I wrote a book, it's out of print right now, but it's called Earning Your Own Respect, and it's about understanding what your value system at any given time in your life is, and living as congruently with that each day of your life as possible, as really being the way to live your life. And it's like, I tell you what, it's helped me so much, Patrick, through the power, the additional powerlessness, and even the helpless feelings that I've had as we've witnessed all this crazy political crap. It's like, just to be able to come back and say, okay, my job, play your position, Tom. Right. Your job is to be the best you that you can be. That's it. It's like, and that's what you need to base your feelings on, how you're doing today. And that's hard, but it's like, when I do it, I'm better. Yeah.
And how do you manage your perfectionism these days, Nadine? I mean, you said that's kind of like your
Oh, yeah.
Crucible.
Yeah. You know what? I talk to myself all the time. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't know, like, I guess there's an I thou relationship within me, mm-hmm. as Martin Buber would say, or an mm-hmm. I me relationship, like who's dreaming the dream, right? Mm-hmm. So I just say, okay, now you'll do it better next time. Yeah. Or like if I'm just so much kinder to myself, and I'm just not nearly as demanding. I mean, first of all, being perfect is totally unrealistic and just puts me in a terrible hamster wheel, and it's not possible, and it's ridiculous. I understand it was a coping mechanism that I used, and an effective one at times when I was younger, and now I just don't need it. And
well, it's self-victimization. When you realize that perfectionism is and I find that people need to be told, because I try not to make assumptions about what the people, because I tend to think things like everybody knows what I know. So I, it's like, I like to say, a perfectionist is not someone who does things perfectly. It's someone who thinks they're supposed to do things perfectly. Right. Therefore, they're in constant pain because the expectation is that you be beyond human capacity. Right. It's like, no, you said it. We can't even do it. It's it's like, so, I mean, how much pain are we putting ourselves in? And then the other thing I was going to say too, that when you talk about that voice, that basically that compassionate voice that comes in, it's like, to me, that's part of what develops over the course of therapy. But one place it comes from are the people we put ourselves in their company, the safe places, and where other people are kind to us. No, even when we're being horrible, if we begin, I used a therapist voice of mine, a therapist I was seeing at the time, because I couldn't get myself to even imagine my voice saying kind things. So, but I could with Linda's voice, I could imagine that. So I could imagine that. And then sure enough, that voice, there's a place now that it's automatic. It's a natural part of me that just says, it's okay. I love that. Okay. We'll do better next time.
Yeah. And what I learned too, is that I always thought it was coming from outside. Mm-hmm. When I first met my second husband, I'm with him 22 years. I'm like, stop trying to make me be perfect. He's like, what are you talking about? Right. And I really thought it was coming from him. Yeah. But it was coming from me internally shaming myself. And so I just bring that to my patient's attention. I'm like, did you hear yourself shaming yourself? You're doing it. So the good news is, since you're doing it, you could stop.
Right on.
But I really thought it was coming from
projection is such an amazing thing. One of the things that I love to do sometimes, Nadine, is when somebody says something horrible like that, I'll follow up by saying, like, well, what do you think? And they'll look at me like, because they think they just told me what they think. And it's like, and I let them sit there for a little while, and I'll go like, no. You told me that asshole that's somewhere inside your head just told you that. But what is
I'm writing that down.
Yeah. That's a good one. I agree.
It's great. Yeah. It's like, because first thing they look at you like, you're not paying attention at all. Because I was very clear.
Like just fell asleep for a few minutes there, right?
Yeah, that's right. And here's the thing. I've been doing this for 40 years. I have never fallen asleep and stayed asleep in a session.
You should put that on your resume, Tom.
I lead with it. That's right.
Thanks for that question, Patrick. That was an important one. Yeah. Well, this has been fun.
Well, the thing is, I was realizing that little pause, of course, I learned being a radio guy back in the radio days, dead air is the most dangerous thing, nobody's talking. And it's like, I just realized at this moment, just before you said that, there was this moment where I realized that it wasn't an awkward silence that was beginning. It really was a calm, peaceful space. That's what I felt anyway. It's like, I thought, I've never experienced that in doing this work. It's like I'm sitting here with the gallery view, so I'm looking at all four of us, and I realized, I wasn't saying anything, and usually when I'm not talking, Alan is. It's like, and he wasn't, and it's like I just thought, okay, it's good. It's
when things are going well, there's no real vacuum to be filled, right?
That's right.
Everything's popping.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be weird on the podcast if all of a sudden we all just go quietly and we all just sit here.
Kind of a seance type thing.
Yeah. It's like, what's for dinner?
That's right. That's funny. It's like we're sitting around and just having a good old Italian dinner together. So where are your offices, Nadine? Are you out? You're located in California. So you're
in Hermosa Beach and Glen Cove, New York. Well, I mean, now it's virtual, but that's where I go back and forth between.
So where in Hermosa were you?
Oh, at do you know where the Spot is? The restaurant, the Spot, the vegetarian restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
3rd Avenue and Hermosa Avenue. Yeah. Manhattan Avenue, I think. Yeah.
I was over on Pacific Coast Highway in Artesia.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure.
Right around the corner.
Yeah. Yep. But now I'm here, there, and everywhere, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I closed that office. I closed my Westlake office. It didn't make any sense to keep paying.
Didn't make any sense. No, it's it'll be interesting to see how the world emerges from all this. Yeah,
there'll be some resistance. I mean, I was saying earlier to Nadine that we live on a farm surrounded by woods, and so when I'm doing FaceTime or telephone conversations, I do it outside with my dog in the woods, and it's like that's going to be hard to give up. It's sure. I mean, just I mean, sometimes, it's like I try not to do that on the FaceTime, but, if they're talking on the phone, my wife says, why was smoke coming from your place down there? And I said, well, I was having a cigar, but it's like, it's like, so she said, I worry when smoke comes from wherever you are. And I appreciate her worrying, but it's like the other day when it was snowing here, and it was a beautiful snow, and I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. It's like, what's funny is you can have these conversations and somebody doesn't even have any idea where you are geographically. It's right. But I was walking with my dog, and I have this one thing that I do with some clients that are just it's like a 30-minute check-in thing when they really don't need a whole session. We're just kind of staying in touch for a little while. And so I was doing one of those calls, and so I just thought, well, I can do that while I'm walking. And it was like the snow was already down on the ground covered, and it was snowing, one of the big flakes snow come down, and it's just like and I just spent some of the time describing this to my client, just how cool it was and amazing it was. It's like, when I think about that versus go back to sit in my office, I'm going like, I don't know.
I know. I hear you. The travel time, all of it. Yeah. So I guess
isn't that amazing in terms of how it's taken away all of that? I mean, a lot of my clients, they love it because they say, I just have to get ready 5 minutes before the session. I don't have to drive anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm home after we're done with the session. I mean, this is.
Yeah, I think our profession has changed forever.
I do. I think so. In fact, there is an organization now.
Okay.
You've heard of it, but they are now licensing us to practice virtually.
Oh,
really? I didn't know this.
That's great. Thank you, Alan.
I don't know if I'm going to go through all these things because I'm getting towards the sunset of my career, but it's called PsyPact. And it's practicing telepsychology under PsyPact. So PsyPact, once you go through it, has a relationship with many states, and they don't have the list of states, which is unfortunate. But what you do is when you get licensed with them, it gives you license to practice through telepsychology in all those states.
Right. Which should happen because everybody has been through so much trauma and needs help.
Well, we have that now. I think right now, don't we have?
We do.
There's been that decision made that we're all allowed, given the freedom to function this way, and it's not considered, it's considered, part of our practice now, or part of the scope of practice.
Right.
But these folks have moved together to really form. Now,
it's beautiful.
There's a few steps to run through to get your, you have to send your transcripts in.
Right.
When we took our psychology, the state, national board thing and stuff like that,
which had nothing to do with the way we practice.
Well, it's right. Listen, those of you that are consumers listening to psychology, this is very important. Just because we're licensed doesn't mean that we're good at doing this stuff. I mean, I've met many people that I would consider paraprofessionals that are better than licensed therapists.
Oh God, yeah.
Their ability to be healers, connect with people. I mean, it's so true. So, you know,
Jacqueline Small wrote the book Naturally Therapeutic.
Oh, you know, that's a great book that she wrote. I mean, I always encourage people, even in my first session, I said, look, this first session is like a first date. It's to see if we want to get together for a second time. I mean, and not everybody you're going to want to, not everybody I'm going to meet, I'm going to want to continue to work with. And not everybody that meets me is going to want to work with me. So I just want to create a space to have an open conversation about it.
Yep, it has to be a good fit for everybody, for sure. Yes,
it does, and that's so important, that good fit stuff. So if you're out there, listen to what Nadine said. She had a trusting relationship with those two physicians that worked with her during the treatment of her breast cancer, and that needs to be the case. Don't settle for anything less in terms of your care. That's so true. It's been so true in terms of dealing with some medical issues I've had. This one doc, I think I was mentioning to Tom, I had a urinary retention problem, right? So I had an obstruction and I couldn't pee. And when you can't pee, it means the urine backs up in your bladder. And your bladder is not made to handle a large volume of urine. So the first time that I was catheterized, I had 1.5 liters of urine in my bladder. Now think about that.
No,
I don't. Me too, Nadine. I'm right there with you.
I'm like,
that was my first response to Nadine. Was like, no, I'm not going to.
Oh, I just have so much empathy, and that doesn't seem possible.
It hurt. Trust me. I mean, all my life I was afraid of being catheterized. I could not wait for this guy to catheterize. Please get something in there and get this urine out, because I feel like I'm going to explode. Right? You're going to poke me, and I'm going to blow up. So I went to see this urologist. It was a series of things getting to him. And I went to him and I was telling him what's going on and the anxiety and stuff that I had with all of this stuff. And he says, look, this is the first time you're going through this. I've done this 1,000 times.
Oh.
And he goes, I'm going to give you my phone number. This is my cell number.
Oh, wow.
Anytime that you're concerned about what you're experiencing and what you're going on, call me, and probably within a few minutes, I'll be able to help you understand what's happening, so you're going to feel less anxious. I felt so cared for. I mean, I only called him twice during that.
I was going to say, you don't need to call him when you have that. Yeah.
This is a bloody story, but I'll tell you, the time I called him, it was my Dexter.
Oh, I hate this story.
This is my Dexter.
Cover your ears.
All right, I won't tell it. It's definitely.
Well, I think the moral of the story is that to be a good therapist, there's one thing you have to have. You have to care. To be a good doctor, to help people. It's so simple. You have to care.
Why don't we end with that? So Nadine, how can people find out about your work and connect?
Oh, they can just Google me, NadineMacaluso.com, or find me on Instagram, Dr. Nadine Macaluso, I think that's my Instagram handle. And just thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Patrick, for putting the schmade together. Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, Nadine.
Okay. My husband is making an Italian dinner, so I do have to go.
Well, good.
Enjoy your dinner.
Enjoy.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
It's a spiral, not a circle. Goes round, round, round. Look for solutions. Be your own friend. Never say never in either direction. Look in the mirror, trust the reflection. Deep in your heart, start right here. That's where it starts.